Okay, as I was explaining the rows, and I think I made a video about this earlier, I have to cut these down. I made these a bunch of years ago and I have to cut these down. I was explaining the rows because I have to get this metal off without destroying the window. And we know that aluminum or solder doesn't stick to aluminum, you know. So in some cases you can use little aluminum pieces to get in between solder joints to separate them. So what I'm doing here, everywhere there's a line, I'm using a little piece of aluminum from a tin can or aluminum can to get in between the joint where I've soldered to the zinc, so that I will do this in both places on both sides. Okay, I'll leave this aluminum in there. Now, you know, I see a lot of people soldering the zinc and they have a big honking lump. Okay, now this is soldered correctly. You can see how semi-smooth my joint is. Okay, which is how it's supposed to be. You shouldn't have a big honking lump of solder on your zinc. So you shouldn't have to be using like painter's tape to control, you know. And I'm doing this because when I soldered this, I soldered it nice, smooth, and a good soaking solder joint. See? So it soaks into, not lays on top of. Alright, now I'm doing this on this side, and I'll do this all the way around. See, I left it here. I'm doing the same thing. I'll be leaving it on this side, so when I turn it over and heat the other side, it'll let go. Theoretically, the metal should let go, and I'm doing this because if I don't, when I turn it over and heat it up with the soldering on the other side, solder flows down. We're in a gravity environment, whether you realize it or not. And so I want, you know, I want it to separate. Okay, now I can cut through my miters with a Dremel, but if I'm not careful, I'll hit the glass with the Dremel, and I don't necessarily want to do that. So I'm leaving the aluminum inside, right? And the reason I'm holding it with pliers is because whether you realize it or not, aluminum conducts heat. That's why they make pots and pans and things out of it. Okay, so if I'm trying to hold on to it with my little fingers, I'm going to burn the crap out of my fingers holding on to the aluminum so it gets in between the joint of the metal that I used on the outside. So that's what I'm doing here. Now this one I already did and got it loose, see? But it's not loose on the back side. So I need to have it loose on the back side also. And there's enough room underneath. See? There's enough room underneath. That's how deep that is. See? Enough room underneath to get the zinc, to get the aluminum up underneath, in between the joint and the metal, the zinc on the outside. So that's why I'm doing this. I've already explained this to Rose. See? So, yeah, and that's why that's why I'm holding onto this with pliers, because it's going to get so hot it'll burn my little fingers, and I don't want that. I don't want to burn my fingers. Okay, so come on, baby. Okay, liquefy the solder and everything goes in between. See, sinks down in there. So, because I soldered this correctly when I did this. So yeah, that's basically why I'm doing this. Okay, so yeah, so when I turn this over and heat the joints on the other side, you know how that slips in? You can do this to separate pieces on repairs also that you have to get out, especially if you're gonna, you know, you're doing a lamp repair and you want to get the piece out intact for whatever strange reason. I know a lot of people out there go, "Oh, just bust it all out." Well, that's nice, but you know, if you're working with a little tiny piece on a shade, you may not have that option. Okay? What are you going to use? A nail set to bust the glass out with? It doesn't always work that way. See? So I'm leaving the piece in there and I'm working my way around. Doesn't hurt to be cautious. Okay? Because I don't want to have to, even though I have to cut these things down, I don't want to have to repair the window also just because I'm cutting it down. That's kind of stupid to me. Okay, get it to sink in. It's a little messy, I know, but like I say, liquefy the solder, and once the solder is liquefied, which is going to be, okay, on this edge, because I said, like I said before, I soldered it correctly. I set the iron on the zinc with the robust flux. See, now that needs to be cleaned off. Okay, I set the solder and the iron on the zinc with the robust flux that I use, that I make myself, tinner's fluid. Okay, and I got a good soaking joint. Okay, so it actually soaks onto the inside of the zinc and makes for a good solid bond instead of something that's just barely on there. Okay, so this actually went right up underneath. See? See that? So that's what I'm doing, and that's why I'm doing that. Hopefully I'll get everything set up. We'll turn it over and show. So thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.